It was just before sunrise, November 17, 2001, cold enough that most people stayed indoors. But she didn't have that choice. Angela sat on a concrete step near a closed diner in downtown Philly, holding a single dollar bill in her hand. It was all she had. Her clothes were soaked from the night rain, her stomach empty, and her eyes, they didn't look angry, or even scared. Just tired. Like someone who'd been walking for too long with no place to go. As cars rolled past and people hurried to work, no one stopped. Not to ask if she was okay. Not to offer help. And honestly, she didn't expect them to. Angela wasn't homeless because she made one bad decision. Life had been breaking her down for years. And now, with $1 left, she faced a choice most people would never understand. She could keep it, try to find something cheap to eat. Or, she could give it away. That moment, on that sidewalk, with no one watching, would change everything. For her, and for someone she hadn't even met yet. Angela was 23. On paper, she was just another homeless person people passed on the street, but that wasn't the whole story. She hadn't always lived this way. Just 4 years earlier, she was holding her newborn son for the first time in a small hospital room in West Philadelphia. She remembered the way he curled his tiny fingers around hers, and how for the first time in her life, she felt needed. She had plans. She wanted to raise him right, maybe get a job in childcare, something stable. But plans don't always hold up when life hits hard. By the time Angela turned 21, she was alone. The people she once trusted had let her down, one after the other. Drugs weren't part of the plan, but at some point, they became a way to get through the day. It started small. Just enough to numb the stress, the cold, the feeling that no one cared. Then, it became her world. She lost her apartment, then her job, and then the hardest part, custody of her son. He was taken in by relatives. Angela told herself it was temporary. Weeks turned into months. She stopped counting. Now, nearly 2 years later, she hadn't seen him. She didn't even know where he was living. That thought haunted her at night, not knowing if he was safe or if he even remembered her face. She didn't cry anymore. She didn't have the energy. Every day was survival. Her mornings started on sidewalks, her nights under bridges or in shelters, if there was space. She moved through the city like a shadow. Most people didn't even glance at her. They just walked faster. Angela had one small bag. Inside was a worn-out sweatshirt, an old photo of her son, and a notebook with a few pages left. She wrote in it when her head was clear. Mostly memories. Sometimes prayers. That morning, November 17, 2001, she woke up colder than usual. She'd slept near the train station, pressed against the wall for warmth, barely able to rest. She couldn't remember the last time she ate a real meal. She felt dizzy, weak, but still got up. She walked to her usual spot near 12th and Market, the place where sometimes people gave spare change or leftovers. She didn't beg. She didn't have the heart for it anymore. By 6:30 a.m., she was sitting on the concrete step with that last dollar in her hand, thinking about what it could buy. It wasn't much, maybe a small coffee or a pack of crackers. That's when she noticed a woman across the street, watching her. Not judging. Not looking away. Just watching. Angela looked down quickly, unsure what to make of it. In her experience, people either ignored her or called the police. But this woman didn't do either. Angela didn't know it yet, but that brief glance, that tiny moment, would be the first thread in a story neither of them could have imagined. And as the city woke up around her, Angela was about to face a choice that would change more than her day. It would change her life. Angela sat on that cold step, holding the dollar like it weighed more than it should. Her fingers were stiff, and her stomach kept tightening with hunger, but that wasn't what bothered her the most. It was the feeling of being stuck, in the same spot, on the same street, with no way forward. She looked at the dollar again, crumpled and worn from being in her pocket for days. It had come from a stranger the night before, who had dropped it in her hand without a word. She hadn't spent it yet, not because she was saving it, but because she couldn't decide what to do with it. The city was waking up now. Doors opening, buses pulling in, people lining up for coffee, rushing to beat the morning traffic. Angela stayed still, just watching. Her throat was dry, and her hands were starting to shake, not from the cold, but from something deeper. She needed food. She needed something to take the edge off. The dollar could help, a little. Enough to get by for a few more hours. Maybe a sandwich from the discount shop 2 blocks away, maybe a coffee to warm her hands. Then she heard footsteps, slower than the others. Not rushed. Not avoiding her. They stopped a few feet away. Angela glanced up and saw the same woman from across the street, now standing near her, holding a paper bag and a bottle of water. She looked clean, in her mid-30s, dressed simply, no makeup, no flash. Her eyes were calm, but focused. Angela didn't know what to expect. Most people didn't stop, and when they did, it didn't always end well. The woman didn't hand her the bag right away. Instead, she crouched down and said softly, "Hey, I saw you over here. You okay?" It wasn't the question that caught Angela off guard. It was the way she asked it, like she actually cared about the answer. Angela didn't respond at first. She wasn't used to people asking her anything. After a pause, she nodded, barely. The woman set the bag down beside her. "It's just a sandwich and some water. Nothing fancy," she said. Then she stood up, ready to leave. No pressure. No pity. Just kindness, quiet and simple. Angela looked at the bag, then at the dollar in her hand. She felt something stir in her chest, not guilt exactly, but something close. She hadn't done anything for anyone in a long time. She could barely take care of herself. And yet, here was someone offering something with no strings. Angela reached into her pocket, pulled out the dollar, and stood up slowly. She caught up to the woman and held it out. "I don't have much," she said, her voice rough from silence, "but I want you to take this." The woman looked at her, confused. "You don't have to do that." Angela shook her head. "I know. But I want to." Her hand didn't waver. In that moment, the dollar wasn't about food or comfort. It was about doing something that mattered. About feeling human again, even if just for a second. The woman paused, then gently took the dollar. She didn't say thank you. She didn't make a scene. She just nodded, like she understood. Angela walked back to her spot, the sandwich untouched in the bag. She wasn't thinking about hunger anymore. She was thinking about how that one small choice, to give instead of take, felt like a crack of light in a wall that had closed her in for years. She didn't know what came next. She didn't know if it even mattered. But for the first time in a long time, she felt like something had shifted. Angela sat back down on that cold step, the sandwich still untouched beside her, the water bottle unopened. She felt lighter, but not because her hands were empty. Something in her chest, tight for so long, had started to loosen, and it wasn't just because she had given away her last dollar. She didn't know what had just happened exactly, only that it felt different than any other morning. She had done something that wasn't about survival. It was about choice. That one act, small as it looked, was hers. 10 minutes passed. Maybe 15. Angela stayed seated, watching the sidewalk fill with footsteps, coats, briefcases, coffee cups. The world was moving, and for once she wasn't rushing to catch up. She reached into her bag, took out the photo of her son, and stared at it. She wondered if he still looked the same. Then, she heard the same footsteps again, slow, steady, coming toward her. She looked up. The woman had returned. Angela blinked, confused. People didn't come back. Especially not for her. The woman smiled, holding something in her hand, a folded piece of paper. She crouched down, same as before, and said, "I didn't want to walk away without asking." Angela said nothing, unsure what this was about. The woman continued, "My name's Joanne. I volunteer at a recovery center nearby. It's safe, and they help people get back on their feet, no judgment." She handed Angela the paper. This is the address. If you ever want to come by. You don't have to decide now. Angela looked at the paper, then at Joanne. Her throat tightened. This wasn't about food, or money, or a handout. Joanne wasn't trying to fix her. She was offering her a chance, one Angela didn't even think she deserved. For a long second, neither of them spoke. Then Angela, voice barely above a whisper, said, "Why me?" Joanne stood, gave her a soft look, and said, "Because you gave when you had nothing. That tells me there's still a lot of you left to save." Angela didn't answer. She couldn't. The words caught in her throat. Joanne nodded once, then walked away, leaving the paper in Angela's hand. It was warm from her touch. Angela stared at it, her hands shaking again, this time not from cold or hunger, but from something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. She didn't know if she would go. She didn't know if she was ready. But now, for the first time in a long time, the door wasn't closed. That morning, she had given away the only thing she had. She thought it would leave her with nothing. Instead, it had brought her a choice. A real one. Angela didn't go to the recovery center that day. She folded the paper and tucked it into the side of her worn notebook. She wasn't sure if she believed in places like that anymore. Over the next 2 nights, she stayed near the train station, sleeping lightly with one eye open, the cold creeping into her bones. But her mind kept going back to Joanne. Her words, her voice, the way she looked Angela in the eye without flinching. On the 3rd morning, Angela reached into her bag for the paper again. The ink had smudged slightly, but the address was still clear. Her hands were shaking. She stood up, heart pounding, and began walking. It took her nearly an hour to find the building. Nothing fancy. A small door with chipped paint and a faded sign that read, "Hope House." Inside, the lights were dim, the air smelled faintly of coffee and disinfectant, and the room was quiet. A woman behind a desk looked up, surprised. Angela didn't speak right away. She just held up the paper. The woman stood and said, "We've been waiting for you." Angela stayed at Hope House for 14 months. The first weeks were the hardest, withdrawal, restless nights, the urge to run. But she stayed. Some days, just getting out of bed felt like a battle. Other days, she wrote in her notebook, remembering the little things, her son's laugh, the sound of rain on her old apartment window, the smell of his baby shampoo. She hadn't forgotten. She had just buried it under years of pain. With time, her hands steadied, her voice grew stronger, and her eyes started to meet others again. She reconnected with her family, slowly, carefully, and with the help of the staff, she reached out to the relatives who had taken in her son. At first, it was just phone calls. Then letters. Then a visit. When she saw him again, he was almost 8 years old, taller than she remembered, but he still had her eyes. He didn't run away. He hugged her. Angela went on to complete a GED program offered through Hope House. Then, she applied for a small scholarship to attend community college. She studied counseling, driven by the thought that maybe she could help someone the way Joanne helped her. Years later, Angela earned her master's degree. She became a licensed counselor, specializing in addiction recovery. She didn't tell her clients much about her past unless they asked. But when they did, she told them the truth, that she had once sat on a cold step with only $1 to her name, thinking her life was over. One evening, after a long day of work, Angela opened her desk drawer and pulled out the old notebook. Inside it was a small envelope she had kept all these years. The same dollar bill, now faded and delicate, was still there, the one she gave away, and the one Joanne returned to her a year after she left Hope House. It wasn't worth anything in money. But to Angela, it was everything. A reminder that sometimes, when you have nothing left, giving what little you can is the beginning of everything. Smiled, and placed it back in the envelope. Then she closed the notebook gently and turned off the light. Most people walk past someone sitting on the sidewalk without ever knowing their story. They see the surface, the worn clothes, the tired eyes, and keep going. But sometimes, it's the smallest act, given at the hardest moment, that opens the door to everything else. Angela didn't turn her life around because someone gave her a miracle. She gave away her last dollar, not to be saved, not to be seen, but because it was the right thing to do. And in that moment, she was more than her past. She was someone who chose kindness when no one expected her to. That single choice didn't fix everything, but it was the start. A quiet reminder that even when you have almost nothing, you still have something to give. And that can change a life, including your own. Angela's story isn't about luck. It's about choice. The kind of choice that's easy to overlook, because it doesn't make headlines or go viral. $1. One step forward. One moment when someone chose to stop and care. That's what made the difference. And it can happen again. Not through grand gestures, but through simple acts that matter more than we think. If this story meant something to you, if you believe that kindness, even when it costs you, can lead to something better, then share it. Let it remind someone out there that they're not invisible. And if you want to hear more true stories of people who chose empathy, who gave when they had little, and found something worth holding on to, subscribe to the Empathy Room. Because stories like this don't end when the credits roll, they begin when we choose to carry them forward.